you're the guy that I like to call the game changer. You're from a set. There's a few guys out there like Robert Rodriguez and Quentin, who everyone talks about, but people sometimes forget to mention you and your partner Myrick. Is that how you say his name?
Yeah, Dan Myrick.
You guys maybe didn't invent the found footage genre, but you changed the game in independent film with Blair Witch.
Yeah.
Is that kind of a safe statement to make?
Well, I mean, I think I mean, look, we definitely reintroduced, or like I always say, we popularized the found footage genre. There wasn't really a genre. And even after Blair Witch, it took a lot, it was funny how it took a lot of years for actually to almost to catch up, for Hollywood to catch up to the whole found footage thing, because there wasn't really a successful found footage movie until Cloverfield. And then Paranormal Activity came out, and Quarantine, and, Wreck, and, and then,
right.
And then now it's like, it's everywhere. But yeah, I mean, look, Dan and I think what Dan and I mostly did was and even to ourselves, I mean, previously to Blair Witch, the biggest dream that any independent filmmaker could wish for was, a Kevin Smith situation with Clerks, or El Mariachi with, Robert Rodriguez. But we kind of, and those movies made a respectable amount of money, but, we were the first, really like, $20,000 independent movie to like compete, on the Hollywood stage. I mean, really compete. I mean, we were number 2 for 2 weekends in a row, right behind a Julia Roberts movie, and I don't know what was the second weekend anyway. But we competed, and it was and even as when we were making the film, and especially when we were editing the film, and we were about to like send it to Sundance, and we were kind of making the final tweaks on the edit, we always kept in mind that we were never going to compete with Hollywood films. Like we were like, look, no matter what we do to this movie, because our big dilemma was like, how much backstory do you put in?
Right.
Do you put in the stuff about the witch and all that stuff, and we at the end we were like, look, this movie's never going to compete with Hollywood, no matter what we do to it. I mean, no matter how we set it up, the movie it's an experimental film.
Right.
And then when when it blew up, we were as surprised as anybody else, But yeah, for us, it kind of, and for a lot of people who, who contact me now and are kind of inspired by what we did, it's mostly just the idea of like, with the right idea, with the right execution, you can do it.
Right.
You know what I mean? And it's a wide open game out there. And if you have something that's worthwhile that people are, attracted to, it's gonna float to the top and get people's attention.
On that note, like I said, you were a game changer. Things from that point on, started to shift for the independent filmmakers, especially in the horror genre. Where do you think that horror is at today? Because there is a lot of horror and paranormal movies being made today that are being done with almost zero budget.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think it has to do, some with Blair Witch, as far as like, inspiring young people, young filmmakers to go out there and do it. I think that also the advance of technology. When we did Blair Witch, we were right on the, everybody's, early on, people were like, wow, Blair Witch is the first digital film to blow up, but actually we didn't shoot the film digitally at all. We shot it on 16 millimeter and then high 8, which is
right.
High 8 is not a digital format. So so it was kind of we were right on the cusp of that
Yeah.
being this movie that using technology that nobody had ever used. But now, man, it's like we still had to edit it on on a pretty expensive machine, and we had to rent the machine. We couldn't even buy it at the time. But now the technology is so easy and so inexpensive that I think that's part of what's going on too, is that everybody's making movies because it's so much easier to make movies these days, So
after Blair Witch, you could have probably done anything you wanted after that. And then let's see. You went on to do your first movie as a director.
Yeah.
Was like 5-6 years later, right?
Yeah. I mean, look, it was. I mean, you have to realize that, like, before Blair Witch, I was like, I was 29 years old. I think when the movie started blowing up, 30 years old, and I had never had any money. I had never had anything. I had been, everybody out, like all the struggling filmmakers out there. You're basically living paycheck to paycheck, and you're scraping by. And then you have this explosion. I mean, literally, like a nuclear explosion goes off in your garage, and you're like, you're left with the fallout, and the fallout, positive and negative. I mean, all of a sudden we had a ton of money, and I could buy a house, and I could buy a car, and I could go on. I got married, started a family, and I didn't have to make another movie. Like I had money. And also we were young, we were completely inexperienced, and we didn't know the repercussions of kind of taking some time off. So but really also it was just that we both Dan and I we never considered ourselves horror filmmakers. Mm-hmm. So when Blair Witch blew up, we really had no horror ideas. We were just we had a couple science fiction scripts and a comedy and this and that, but nobody was going to let us do those movies.
Right.
And we were just so burnt out on it, man. We were so burnt out on Blair Witch, on like being in that horror and that that mindset of like figuring out a way to kill kids and possession and witches and all that stuff. And I was personally just tired of it. So I kind of semi-retired, and Hollywood, our agent sent us a ton of scripts. Nothing really kind of jumped out at us. Nothing really, And man, it took, and for me, it took me 5 or 6 years just to kind of, get back in the mindset of, okay, I'm gonna make more films.
And here's the thing: I had seen Altered years ago. I had no idea that it was the same guy who did Blair Witch. You weren't like one of these, after coming off a movie like Blair Witch, you didn't take that celebrity director route like guys like Quentin Tarantino and Kevin Smith tend to take when they have these kind of blockbuster openers.
Yeah.
You didn't get out. You've done a bunch of interviews and things like that, but you didn't really do you went back to the East Coast. You kind of laid low.
Yeah. Yeah, I never imagined myself living in LA, and I like LA, but especially after Blair Witch, man, there was I had a lot of best friends all of a sudden, and I knew that that's dangerous. I mean, it's just the kind of guy I am. Like, I'm not, like I'm an artist, and I like people saying, "Oh, I love your work more than anybody." I mean, I live for that. But at the same time, I know when it's I can feel when it's sincere and when it's not sincere. Right. So I just couldn't take the whole. I mean, in LA, like I was like recognized on the street. You know what I mean? Yeah,
like, I imagine.
You know what I'm saying? It's like it was just not a comfortable place for me. So I never thought I was going to move to LA. But really for me it was kind of like just going back to where I felt comfortable. My wife and I were both raised here in the Maryland, the tri-state area, and it's like it's home to us, and even though we're contemplating moving out west just to make things a little easier for me to work, we still call this home, and I just feel comfortable here. But yeah, man, I mean, it's just I there's like this part of me where like I see myself, like especially like Darren Aronofsky. Yeah. Darren Aronofsky, like he did Pi right before Blair Witch with Artisan, the same company that released Blair Witch, and I met Darren like at Cannes that year, and we talked for a while, and he was already talking to me about what Artisan was going to do this, and this is before Blair Witch blew up. Right. But I kind of compare his career to my career, and look, he's a really talented guy. I'm not saying that we're like we're different kinds of filmmakers, but I always compare him because he's kind of the closest guy that I have to gauge. And there's some things where I'm like, man, I wish sometimes I wish I could have been a little more out there and live the LA lifestyle a little more, and maybe met more celebrities and stuff. But at the same time, it's like I'm really happy where I'm at right now, and who the hell knows.
Your movies tend to be
where would I be? Who knows?
Yeah, thematically, it's kind of stayed with the monsters or scary themes in your own home or in your own backyard. Yeah. And that brings me to your new movie, which is what everybody in my field wants to talk about, and the subject of Bigfoot. Now, before we talk about your movie, is your influence, or what influenced you to go in this direction, into the Sasquatch direction?
Well, I mean, Sasquatch is by far my favorite monster. You know, like he is, or he or she or it, whatever you want to call it. You know, he's the stuff of my childhood nightmares. Like he, you know, like when I saw the In Search Of episode on Bigfoot, you know, that was a game changer for me, and you know, and for Dan too. And it so totally, that whole show influenced Blair Witch so much. But to me, Bigfoot was like this thing that could exist in my backyard. You know what I mean? Like to me, ghosts and, you know, possession and stuff like that was always, even though, you know, I was Christian, I was raised Christian, and like, so The Exorcist was kind of like, oh, you know, this Satan is real and it could happen. Bigfoot to me was like, okay, I'm looking outside my window and I see those woods. Bigfoot could be in those freaking woods. Yeah. You know what I mean? So to me, it was like this immediate thing that you know, even though I lived in the middle of suburbia, you know, right, you know, suburb of Washington, D.C., where there wasn't a square mile of woods anywhere.
Right.
I still, you know, there was a patch of woods behind my, you know, my apartment complex, and that's where I thought Bigfoot lived, you know. So. Right. So I've been fascinated by Bigfoot, you know, everything, cartoons and $6 Million Man and all the documentaries, Legend of Boggy Creek, you know, even Bigfoot and Wild Boy.
Yeah.
I don't know if you heard that series.
No,
you know,
I've got to look into that one.
Yeah, it was a very short-lived series. It was called Bigfoot and Wild Boy. It was very interesting. But so I was just, you know, I just loved Bigfoot. And so then when Harry and the Hendersons came out, you know, I was a fan. But then what happened to Bigfoot afterwards, where he kind of became a punchline, even though I love those ads and I love, you know, I think Bigfoot is a funny thing. Even while we were making this movie, we're like, man, we could do a parody sequel like right after this would be hilarious. But to me, it was kind of capturing the fear and the kind of the fascination that I had with the creature, you know, before he turned into a joke. So. Yeah. You know, actually, the Bigfoot was I've been writing Bigfoot scripts for a while, and this is the third script that I've been involved with, Sasquatch script, and actually a Sasquatch script called Manable was the first script I wrote after Blair Witch, yeah. But it was like a, you know, $80 million period movie in the winter, right. And it was really cool, and I hope that one day I get to make it, but it's you know, it was a little ambitious.
Yeah.
But it actually made the rounds, and it got me a lot of attention and a lot of meetings, because there is this fascination with Bigfoot, you know.
Yeah.
So eventually, last year, we were talking about making a Bigfoot movie, and I was like, you know, the only way we're going to be able to do it is you have to go to low budget. You got to go super low budget. You know, spend money on the creature suit, because that's key.
Yeah.
And then go out and do it. You know what I mean? So we wrote this script, and we decided to do it found footage again, and you know, go back to the roots. And you know, Jamie Nash wrote it, who's been my collaborator all these years, and he you know, we just came up with a story, and we went down to Austin and we shot it, and it's, you know, it's a Bigfoot movie, man. It's like literally it's literally like the only Bigfoot movie I've seen where the creature lives up to the expectations that I've set for it, you know. And I know that, look, there hasn't been that many great Bigfoot movies, but yeah. There have been some good ones, you know. And to me, like, this is kind of like, to me, the whole thing was like, okay, can I shoot a guy in a suit and make it look cool, and make it look like the way I want it to look, like, right. Make it look like Bigfoot. And I think we did it, you know, and we've had screenings all over the place. Well, not all over the place, but we've had a bunch of screenings. And the one thing that, you know, is universal is that people love the creature, and they, you know, and they almost root for the creature.
Right on. So out of curiosity,
it's the star, you know?
Yeah, out of curiosity for the creature, how did you go about designing the creature? Did you go back and revisit like all the old stuff? Did you look at Patterson Gimlin? Did you just start looking at everybody else's Bigfoot videos online?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, definitely look at everybody else's Bigfoots. You know, definitely Patterson Gimlin. I mean, you know, even though I can play that movie back in my head, you know, from memory, you know, that, and then just basically we work with this company called Spectral Motion, who is run by Mike Elizalde, who's like this freaking amazing, creature designer.
Yeah.
He's Academy Award nominated. I mean, and he's a really good guy, and he works with us. He's always working on big films, but likes to work with us smaller guys.
Yeah.
And him and I have always, we've been talking about Bigfoot for so long, and he did some sketches for another Bigfoot movie that I was trying to develop. So we kind of got together, and then the Weta workshop, the guys in New Zealand who do all that, Lord of the Rings and Hobbit. Yeah. We had a connection with them through our producer, Mark Gordeski, and we talked to them, and we got some designs from them. And then we first decided on the guy. Mike suggested this guy named Brian Steele, who's like 6'7", really good shape. He basically plays all the big creatures, you need a guy in a suit that's big. It's him. So we designed the suit around him, and I just tried to make him scary, but I didn't try to make him a monster. I try to make it like where it looks like an animal, and it's crazy, man, because at the end of the movie, there's literally a super close up of this creature, just looking at the camera. And it works. It looks like a freaking animal, I never knew. I would never, in my wildest dreams, thought I was going to be able to do that. You know what I mean?
That's very cool, man. So do you like to stick with that kind of monster in your backyard theme? It seems to carry. Lovely Molly wasn't a monster in your backyard theme, but it was this house in the woods.
Yeah.
And Altered was that alien in your backyard. Is it scarier that way for you?
Well, obviously for a lot of reasons it's budgetary reasons. You try to stick, to one location. That's why most horror films, the low budget horror films, are one location, few characters. The woods are just a great playground, great horror playground, and they're easy to find, and you don't have to, production design them at all. But also to me, there is this kind of, being safe at home and having this monster just outside, and then how it kind of gets into the house or gets into your head. It's I've always loved those kinds of stories, where it's like you're isolated and there's something out there and you don't know what it is, and you have to figure it out, and you have your choices. You can like stay inside and guard up, or you can go out and get it. But so I love those kinds of stories.
So those stories, like those monsters in your backyard, in preparing for Exists, did you go out Bigfooting with any Bigfooters at all? Did you take it to that level, or did you keep it? You just try to keep that separate, and you just wrote a movie and went and made the scariest movie you could?
No, I mean, look, man. I love the Bigfoot shows, and I've never been Bigfooting. I mean, honestly, because I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
I'm not going Bigfooting. Like Blair Witch was born from Dan and me, and a lot of the stuff that I wrote in Blair Witch came from just camping, and being in the freaking tent, and you hear shit outside. It's just very disconcerting, So to me, going out trying to find Bigfoot is not something that I want to do. But to me, it's like there is this respect for the people that take Bigfoot as real, And to me, it's like, if you ask me, do you think Bigfoot is real? I can't say yes, but I can't say no either, And I want it to exist, but at the same time, I'm realistic about it. You know what I mean? So it's one of these things that you have to kind of respect and fear, and that's kind of where I came from. It like, to me, it was like, okay, how do I make a movie that doesn't betray what the creature is to me, because I mean the thing about the Bigfoot, not most, but a lot of the other Bigfoot movies is that it can't just be Bigfoot. There's always got to be like an alien element, or like it can do something supernatural. Its eyes glow. Like to me, Bigfoot is just a big ape. It's a missing link. And to me, it doesn't have supernatural powers, but it has superhuman strength. It's it's like fighting a gorilla. I mean, you have no chance of beating a gorilla,
Right.
So to me, it's like a 7-foot gorilla. And so that's kind of where I came from, just the idea of like, okay, how do we make this realistic and not jump the shark at any time, you know?
Yeah, that's really cool. So speaking of jumping the shark, did you come across all like the letters from the big man type of stuff in your research? Do you hear like all the stories about the mind speak and all the alien connection? You obviously have come across that.
Yes, yes, absolutely. I mean, you know, and that's kind of like, you know, like I didn't come. I don't know when that came about. Like there wasn't. I don't know if there was that connection when I was younger, and
Yeah.
you know, I think that stuff developed later. But to me, it's like it's just not yet necessary.
Yeah.
You know, to me, like, you know, it makes it creepier if it's based on, you know, reality. You know what I mean? It's like, to me, like, what made Alien creepy was like, it wasn't about like, you know, it was science fiction, but it was like good science fiction. It's like, yeah, there's this planet and there's this thing that is on this planet and it's waiting for these hosts to come in. It totally makes sense to me. You know what I mean? So to me, it's like adding an alien origin or some kind of weird supernatural thing to Bigfoot is completely unnecessary. It's like two different things, you know, and it really is, to me, jumping the shark.
What movies have you seen recently that have scared you? Specifically monster movies, if you have one. If not, just any movie.
I did a short movie in a movie called VHS 2.
Yeah.
That's coming out soon, and there's all the movies in there are really good, and there's some crazy, you know, moments in that film that I love.
I really the first VHS was one of my favorite scary movies of I think it was last year. It might have been 2011. I didn't see it until about 6 or 7 months ago. But you direct a segment in the new one, correct?
The new one, yeah, and the new one. I mean, I love the old one too, but the new one is like crazy. Like there's Gareth Evans does a one, and he, like, you know, we all had the same amount of money, but he somehow can stretch his dollars, man, because his movie is like, I mean, it would have cost probably, you know, $1 million at least to do that movie here in the States, but he packs it in, and it's a kind of a classic, you know, not monster, but it's a classic horror movie. But all the movies are really good, man. They all stand on their own. But you know, I watched. You know, man. I don't like. I mean, you know, as weird as this sounds, I don't like watching horror movies. Like I don't, you know, like scary movies. Like I freak out at, you know, things, and I have a very imagination. So, but I watched a little, and I watched Sinister a little bit on the plane, and you know, it freaks me out, man. It just freaks you out. And it was good. I mean, and I like that guy's film. I also liked Emily Rose a lot. When his last film. But yeah, man, you know, to me, it's like the you know, the stuff that's kind of hidden and slowly creeps up on you is the stuff that I like. Yeah. And then there's the fun stuff. You know, like I like Cabin in the Woods. You know, it's not scary, but it was very clever. Yeah, man, like I said, I'm not really, you know, I'm not really a horror guy, and my wife doesn't really like horror movies. So, most of the times I have to watch them by myself, and I don't like doing that, you know. Actually, I saw a pretty good Australian film called The Tunnel.
I heard about that movie.
Yeah, it's pretty good, man. It's like
check that one out.
Yeah, they did a good job on it.
So you have behind you here, everyone can see all your Star Wars paraphernalia and other sci-fi collectings back there. You did Altered, which was an alien movie. Any more sci-fi in your future?
Yeah. You know, I always have a soft spot for sci-fi. Like, you know, it's I used to read it exclusively as a kid. Like my teenage years, I just read, you know, Arthur C. Clarke and you know, Isaac Asimov and Ray Bradbury. And I love those, you know, those. And I have ideas, but I'm kind of right now. I'm working on something that's like a really unique, low budget sci-fi idea that hasn't been done. A friend of mine named Lynn Fahrenheit came up with it, and he pitched it to me years ago, and we've slowly been developing it, and it's a really tricky one. But that's really, and then I'm doing, well, I'm not doing it, but I'm developing a TV show about ghosts and stuff, and like a more futuristic look at ghosts. But I mean, the problem with sci-fi, man, is that it's expensive, you know.
Yeah.
And it's kind of been. I mean, we'll see what Oblivion does this weekend, but there hasn't been big science fiction is hard to market. Like they don't. It doesn't work. Like even Prometheus, like, you know, with all that, didn't make as much money, I think as they thought it was going to make. So it's hard to market. It's hard, you know, it's very expensive to make and it's hard to market. So there's kind of a place, you know, and there's always exceptions, of course. But yeah, I mean, I love that genre, and I could stay in sci-fi forever. But I like the idea of doing kind of a horror sci-fi. To me, that's like the best of both worlds. But I also want to do I want to do a comedy soon. You know, I definitely want to spread my wings a little bit. But we'll see what happens.
When you talk about sci-fi, like for me, like when I go to my movie classics, and I love monster movies. Monsters are my thing. Like I go back to Aliens. Even though it's a sci-fi movie, I consider it a monster movie. I talked to Lyle Blackburn about that, and he feels the same way, that that's a horror movie, that's a monster movie.
Oh, absolutely.
It just happens to be in space. I also think of Jaws as probably my favorite monster movie. That alien monster thing, do you think it's kind of hard because sci-fi misses the mark more, I think, than any other genre. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
When they make a sci-fi, it's really easy for them to miss the mark. What is it about a good sci-fi monster like Aliens? It seems to have a connection to other monsters like say Bigfoot or whatever. The idea that it can someday happen. What is it to you about the sci-fi alien antagonist? What do you look for?
I mean, the problem with alien, like anything on the Earth, you know, the problem with any kind of alien movie on the Earth is that it would be over in a second.
Right.
I mean, you know, you have people, you know, you have this technology that like can take you to this planet. You know, as soon as you're like, okay, these guys somehow made it to this planet, that means that they are at least a couple thousand, if not a million, you know, couple 100,000 years ahead of us.
Right.
So it's like us fighting, you know, gladiators, you know, with, you know, F-16s and, you know, and drones. I mean, and tanks. I mean, it would be over in, you know, a day. You know, it would be, you know, so for me, you have to kind of find the little, you know, relatively realistic niche and kind of stick with it. You know what I mean? And with Altered, we found that, you know, it was like this war between, and when it would be revealed later, we made this like huge Bible for Altered, which is really cool, about like all the races and how they came to be and what's going on. But basically Altered is just like the beginning of this huge war, this alien war,
right,
where the Earth is kind of the battlefield between all these alien races. And to me, like, you know, Aliens is just, you know, Aliens, Aliens, you know, and I'm not saying it was I mean, you know, James Cameron was a great filmmaker and it was a great film, but all the groundwork had been laid by Alien.
Yeah.
I mean, like, not that you needed to see Alien, but Alien was such a huge movie that even if you didn't see it, you knew what the alien looked like. You knew that world. You knew Ripley, Sigourney Weaver. I mean, it was a huge movie in the late 70s, you know? So when Aliens came around, you know, he could just jump right into it. You know, there was very little world setting that he had to do. Where instead of, like Avatar takes a while to frickin' wind up because he has to educate you so much.
Right.
With Aliens, man, he just went right into it, you know. So I think, and it's a completely realistic situation. It's like, okay, instead of one alien, it's a bunch of aliens, and the one alien, you know, almost kicked everybody's asses in the first movie. So imagine 100 of these, you know, frickin' things. You know what I mean? So to me, there's always has to be this kind of believability, and I think that's the problem with sci-fi, and you know, problem with horror too. Is that if you have to kind of, the tone has to be perfect, you know what I mean? Like you have to walk the line. You have to walk the line of like, okay, if this is a totally realistic movie, then you have to kind of keep it. You can't go off the rails, you know what I mean? And to me, like that's what I love about Altered is that it's serious, but it's not really 100% serious. There's just 10% of like kind of goofiness that I like.
Yeah.
that you could kind of like, okay, I'll let you get away with that because you're not taking yourself 100% serious. You know what I mean? I think that's the key to a lot of, and I think that was the problem I think with Prometheus to a certain extent, is that it was super serious, but there were so many holes in it that it just kind of, because if you're super serious, man, you got to fill in all those damn holes. It has to like be 100% logically makes sense. You know what I mean?
Right.
And because you give yourself no wiggle room. So as soon as you make a mistake, you kind of, as a film goer, you're like, why did they do that? And why was that happening? And it's very hard to get out of it. While a movie like, that has a little bit more wiggle room, and and Aliens is serious, but at the same time it's an action movie. So there's a little bit of like that kind of disbelief going on. It's just I mean, look, man, there's no secret formula. It's just like it's to build the world and try not to break the rules. It's for every movie.
I watch Altered. Like I said, I didn't know it was your movie the first time I saw it. I didn't know it was from and I recently revisited that movie a couple of times, and I love that movie. I love it because it's this scary monster, but you set it up where I could believe that particular situation with an advanced being, where these four guys got one of them, and then we're shitting in their pants about what might happen when the rest of them find out. I found it I suspended my disbelief enough on the other things because I was so interested on how that alien was fucking with them. It was a good time.
Yeah, no, I mean it's one of those movies, man. Like I said, it's like you have to kind of like when Jamie, when I read the original script, it was called Probed, and then the distributor but they suggested we change the title, but it was Probed. I mean, it actually Probed is a much better title for Altered than Altered, really. And it was that kind of movie. It was very funny, whatever. And I kind of toned it down. I was like, okay, let's get a little bit serious, but let's not take it a complete serious. I love those kinds of movies because, I mean, and that's the great thing about horror, man, is that, like I said, I never considered myself a horror filmmaker. Like, if you look back at my film school movies, I do comedies, I do action movies. I mean, horror was the last thing I wanted to do. But the great thing about horror is that, it has all these different subgenres. You can do, I mean, a horror movie is Aliens, a horror movie is Jaws, a horror movie is Amityville Horror, is Exorcist, is Evil Dead. I mean, there's such a wide range of kind of, action movies and zombie comedies. I mean, there's so much variety there that as a director, you're pigeonholed, but you're not quite as pigeonholed as if you were, an action movie director or a comedy director. Like, you're kind of stuck at that point, But so I'm glad I'm stuck in the horror genre, and my whole thing is just to keep kind of challenging myself and trying to continue to make better and better films.
Well, that leads up to my next question, and Bigfoot is hot right now. Bigfoot, my friends and I say, Bigfoot is one of the best brands out there right now. But another thing that's hot and has been for a while now is zombies. You watch Walking Dead. You think about doing a zombie movie. You have a favorite?
I watched the first episode of Walking Dead and I liked it, but like I said, man, most of my TV watching I have to watch with my wife because that's the time together. So we're kind of like, it's kind of a democracy, actually more like on her side. Like, she kind of decided to watch, but so I'd like to see it. I think what I'm going to do is wait till it's done and then watch it, do Netflix it or whatever, you know what I mean? I love doing things like that. No, actually it's funny, man, because my short film in VHS2 is a zombie movie.
Nice.
Yeah, so it's cool.
Very cool.
It's very clever and funny zombie movie. But man, yeah, zombie movies, I mean, even just from the beginning of that, man, with George Romero, I mean, it's just, there's just something inherently so creepy about that first movie, you know what I mean? But no, I think it's a great genre, and it's all over the place now because it's so cheap to do, you know what I mean? You just put makeup on some people and they're slow, but you can definitely build a lot of tension and build. But my favorite zombie movie, what would be my favorite one? I mean, I love Shaun of the Dead.
Yeah, that was funny.
Yeah, really funny. I like when they kind of and all of them kind of, especially later on, they kind of didn't take themselves 100% serious. But I like all the Romero ones, and I liked Zombieland. I thought
Yeah.
that was a lot of
I
fun.
like that one too. When I watched the first time I saw 28 Days Later, I was like, "Oh, this is oddly familiar."
Yeah,
I had the Blair Witch feeling. It was like when I was watching that movie in the theater for the
yeah.
first
Oh,
time.
and yeah, and 28 Days Later too. Like just a good, solid kind of ride. You know what I mean?
Yeah. When you were doing your research, did you come across the hoaxing, and what's your thoughts on why there's such a huge rise on hoaxing?
Well, I mean, yeah, and also, our whole thing is like, do you use hoaxing to promote the movie? Because I mean, honestly, we could put some scenes from the movie that look like it's home video. It looks like home video,
Right.
and we shot some other stuff, some test stuff, that looks really good and it looks like those sightings. But I mean, look, the problem with the hoaxing is that and this is what goes back to like what I said earlier, is that you have to respect the people that like love Bigfoot, and there's people out there who Bigfoot is like a religion to them.
Yeah.
They take it completely serious, and I got to respect that. I mean, I'm not quite to that point, but I see where I see where they're coming from. Like,
Right.
it is a fascinating thing to contemplate. So my thing is like hoaxing to me is kind of like trying to trick those people, and I don't like that. But I love the hoaxes, man. I love how it's always blurry, and I love how you can never really see it. And but there's some great creepy ones out there, man. There's some of the best, like I mean, and whatever you think of Patterson Gimlin, I mean, if that's a hoax, that was a damn good hoax.
Right. And I ask everybody of that question about Patterson Gimlin, but before I ask you that, these hoax videos are usually an attempt to get something to go viral. And the first thing I can ever remember going viral was the Blair Witch campaign. I don't know if that would be considered one of the first kind of viral campaigns. I don't have there been other ones as successful as Blair Witch?
No, because and look, and there have been some great ones. I mean, there's one. I mean, it's a business now. Like they basically people build those campaigns. But the thing that made Blair Witch special was that it was the perfect subject matter. Like, it was like a documentary about people that got lost in the woods. And it was 1999. It was at a place where, well, actually 98. We started the site in 98. It was a time when the internet was like, a fraction of the size that it is now.
Yeah.
There's no YouTube. There was no Facebook. There was AOL. And basically, like when you to send a video virally, you had to send it. You had to send this 1 megabyte, 2 meg, and download it all night long. And the old days, the wild west of the internet. So Blair Witch kind of took the technology of the internet, which is like sitting in front of the screen and being able to dig deeper and click and do searches and this. It was the first time that I think it had been done in that way, and because it was just it was the beginning of the internet, you know what I mean? And then for us, it was all instinctual. It was just like, all right, we're gonna put this up, and we're gonna do this, and we're gonna do that, and it was the only way we had of promoting the movie,
Yeah.
So, no, I mean, I don't think there's ever. I mean, I can't say that there's ever going to be anything more successful, but I think to me, like the whole thing about Blair Witch was that it was the first time people had done it.
Yeah.
It was the first, people would email me and be like, I mean, I just spent 3 hours at work trying to find, information about this. And the thing about it is that there was just enough information to make it feel real, but not enough to like discount it, because they were supposed to be the students were supposed to be from Montgomery College, which is a real college that I went to. But it's not like you can go online and search the role, the student roles. They're not going to let you do that. So there's this level of like, should I call Montgomery College and ask about the students, and will they give me the information and this and that? So there was like these, and there was, detectives reaching out to us and saying, man, I spent 3 days trying to do this. I haven't found any information, and what's going on. So to us, it was just, having that kind of fun. But at the same time, man, like we didn't want Blair Witch to be a hoax,
Yeah.
We wanted it, we wanted the movie to we didn't want people to get mad at us after they found out. And I know a lot of people did get mad. But that was totally, once we sold the movie, Artisan was like, no, we're going to sell this as a hoax. And it was like, all right, well, I guess you guys know better than us, So.
Okay. So the last question I need to ask you then, the big thing in the Bigfoot field is Patterson Gimlin. You know, that
Right.
and it seems to fall into that same problem where it was so long ago. There was only so much information available. So many people have tried to stake claim to that they were the guy in the suit. Then
Yes.
then there's enough data to suggest that, well, that wasn't possible. He doesn't walk that way, or this and that. I've always been kind of 50-50 as a Bigfoot guy. Where are you with Patterson Gimlin as a filmmaker when you look at that? Do you see man in a suit, or do you see a real thing?
That's an interesting question, man, because, Patterson Gimlin, like, really, like you were talking about Blair Witch viral, like that really was the first kind of viral thing that wasn't viral. It was mostly TV. Cause I mean, that's one of my earliest memories is seeing that damn thing, the thing about that piece of film, man, is that it's so authentic. It just feels so real. And like the whole, and the fact that like it was right there. Like the horse is like, shaky, but then he shows it and you see it walking and it looks. And I don't know if have you seen all of it? Like when it keeps walking away, it's creepy as shit, man. Yeah. So to me, and then, you have people like, people who like completely break it down. Mm-hmm. Like, that, like Lyle, like, that book he wrote. Mm-hmm. Lyle Blackburn, about Boggy Creek and when he examines about the Patterson Gimlin movie, and then I went to a Bigfoot convention last year, and Lauren Coleman was there examining the thing, and he's kind of like the godfather of Bigfoot scientists and cryptozoologists, and he he pauses the movie, the frame, and he says, "Look. There's breasts. It has breasts, and look how the calf muscle moves, and man, I mean, honestly, that thing was shot in like what was it, the late '60s, or I mean, there's no. I mean, what Hollywood movie can you point to where that suit was possible? Yeah, you know what I mean. But then at the same time, you're like, there's no way they got it. Bigfoot on film. It's just like unbelievable, but at the same time, it's one of these things like it's almost like the pyramids or like right. These kind of phenomena where you're like, okay, there it is, but how the hell did they build it, or how the hell? And then my whole thing is like, there's always been these people like you were saying, like, oh, I was the guy in the suit, and there was a hoax and this and that. But I'm like, okay, then where is that suit? And show me how you do. Because I mean, look, we did. We spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on our suit for Exists. And, it's state of the art. I mean, it is freaking, it's like I said, it's Michael Azaldi, Academy Award nominated guy who does, Hellboy, and, look at, mm-hmm. look at spectralmotion.com, look up their site and see what they've done. And our Bigfoot looked really good, man, really great, but you look back and you're like, how the hell did they pull that off, 40 years ago or whatever, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, like what? 50, almost 50 years ago, like how? So to me, like there's this thing of just like disbelief. And I think that's kind of what is beautiful about that footage. It's like there's disbelief, but it's like, it's the most convincing piece of like paranormal, if you want to call Bigfoot paranormal footage ever. I mean, even like the best UFO footage has still not shown a craft landing and people and things coming out of the. I mean, I'm saying like you see them in the air, you're like, wow, that's really cool. It's going behind the light post, and how the hell did they do that? And it looks real. But to me, like that Patterson Gimlin film is like the one piece of footage where you're like, okay, this. How do you explain this? If it's a guy in a suit, what the hell suit is that? And how much money did they spend on that suit? And if it's not a guy in a suit, what the hell is it? And I think that's really what, I mean, honestly, man, that piece of footage is like it was like it was like the bomb in the Bigfoot, like
it's the catalyst for Bigfoot.
That's a catalyst for everything, man, and it's an amazing piece of footage all these years later,
Yeah, it's incredible. It's that's always the thing that gets me is like, well, how did they do it? If there's always a part of me that can't fully commit, but I always ask that question. If I'm being true to myself, I have to ask how they did it, and I can't ever come up with an answer. And the interesting thing is, talking to Bobcat, who also has a scary Bigfoot movie coming out this year. He's on the inside in Hollywood right now trying to get to the bottom of it, and he's not coming up with any more answers than anybody else has. And he can't find the suit maker. He can't. He talked to John Landis, who supposedly was secretly behind all of this. Everyone is saying he can't get any information. Nobody had anything to do with it. So it's like
no, yeah, man, and you know, and that's the whole thing. You ask, like, you know, like Mike Elizalde and those guys that build those suits. You ask them, like, how the hell, you know, do they pull that off? And they're like, well, you know, yeah, I think we could pull it off, but it would be, it's a hell of a challenge. You know?
Pretty expensive, pretty crazy. Well, dude, I want to thank you for making the time today. This has been a great birthday treat for me to talk to one of my favorite filmmakers. I'm truly a fan.
Thanks,
man. Keep it up. I'm really, really, really looking forward to Exists.
Cool.
I've heard nothing but good things from people who have seen it at the screenings. And yeah, dude, rock and roll. Next time in your LA, let's talk Star Wars and have a coffee and talk Star Wars.
Let's do it, man. Happy birthday to you, man, and thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. I know you're a busy man. I'm going to let you go now. Enjoy the rest of your Saturday.
Take care, man. You too.
Okay, see you, Eduardo.
Bye.